A biblical perspective on life, culture and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
This is Andrew McLennan. As Christians, we are confident with the biological fact that they are male and female, the same as the biblical foundation of God creating men and women. A new dimension to the controversy over whether sex is biological or based on feelings is simmering in Western Australia. Peter Abetz is the WA State Director for the Australian Christian Lobby. He believes his state government's Births, Deaths and Marriages Registration Amendment on Sex or Gender Changes Bill 2024 legalises the spread of misinformation and disinformation. Peter, welcome.
Good to be with you, Andrew.
Peter, for our listeners across Australia today, tell us exactly what this bill proposes to do in Western Australia.
Well, the bill basically wants to get rid of the Gender Reassignment Board, where if you wanted to change your gender, you had to satisfy the board that you generally had to have a sex change operation before you could get that. But that's been changed now, and basically it's to abolish the Gender Reassignment Board, and basically you just have to fill in a form, and then every 12 months you can change your sex or gender.
Wow. So it's just like going to the chemist and, getting yourself some over-the-counter drugs to fix whatever symptoms you're feeling in the moment.
Yeah, you do need to have a certificate from a doctor or psychologist to say that you've been counselled about this, and then away you can go. So my concern is that with a birth certificate, that is actually, or it should be, a historic factual document. And, of course, a birth certificate up till now has always recorded a person's biological sex, which is a simple observable fact, and that gets recorded. But if the government allows you to get a new birth certificate, which actually has something that's contrary to fact on it, it borders on deception.
Yeah, I like the terminology you're using, disinformation, because I'm just processing what you're saying, and I'm sure our listeners are as well. If we can alter the record that was actually written at our birth, because obviously we had a physical, what's the word I'm looking for? A physical indicator of our gender. If we can just change that because we feel like changing it, that actually is disinformation, isn't it? That in a sense, we're lying about who we really are.
And you're absolutely right. And the other thing is that it has really serious repercussions, particularly in the medical field. Like, for example, if you go into a hospital and you're actually a biological female, but you identify as a male, and you have certain symptoms, they are very different. Like for a heart attack, the symptoms for men and women are actually quite different. And so if you give the wrong information to a doctor, they may not pick up that you're actually having a heart attack, and it could actually cause deaths. And there's quite a few medical areas where whether you're male or female is really important. Even some medications, the dose rates for males and females are very different, and if that gets mixed up, it can have very serious health consequences. So a birth certificate, if it actually provides the disinformation or misinformation, then it really, what's the point of having one?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's almost, this is a permission slip, isn't it, for people just to live in a fantasy land where they want to be something, and the government's saying, well, if you want to be that, you just go and be that. But as you said, the science basically says that you aren't that. So you're trying to even contradict science, forgetting what the Bible says.
Yeah, and look, if a male wants to act like a stereotypical female or a female like a stereotypical male, look, they're free to do that, but don't ask the government to certify that you're the person of opposite sex, because biologically it's simply untrue. And the other, I think, big problem that's going to emerge with this is it makes it so much simpler to change gender that we'll have more biological males who identify as females wanting to enter female-only spaces such as women's change rooms, toilets, women's domestic violence shelters, sports teams. Basically, it's erasing womanhood, and I think that's a really serious issue for society. Women have fought so hard to be recognised and to have female sports, say female AFL teams and so on, and all of a sudden now society is trying to say, well, it doesn't really matter if you're a biological male, as long as you feel that you're a woman, you can be a woman, which is just plain nonsense. As you said, it's kind of living in a fairy tale world, which is not reality.
So the million-dollar question is, why is the Western Australian government even contemplating doing this?
Well, just about every other state has done that. They've got rid of the Gender Reassignment Board, and in every other state, as far as I'm aware, you can simply declare that you identify as a woman, say if you're a bloke, and then you can go and get your birth certificate changed, and you can get it changed once a year in most states, is my understanding.
So you guys aren't the first state, you're actually just following a trend that was already set elsewhere?
Correct, yes. So in a sense, it's nothing new as far as the nation is concerned, but I just think it's another opportunity just to highlight the folly of this trying to say that sex or gender is a social construct when we know it's absolutely false. The science tells us that it's absolutely false. And what I find so crazy in all this is that when it comes to climate, everyone says you've got to follow the science. But when it comes to biology and gender, don't follow the science, just follow your feelings. I mean, it's crazy.
Well, it's hypocritical, and you've hit the nail on the head there, because the cliche about climate change is the science is already settled. And I would imagine if a doctor at birth says that you're a male or a female, I would suggest that the science was settled on that. But now we're saying we can change the science when it suits us.
Well, basically the birth certificate has become or is becoming a document that reflects how you feel, but not what is biological reality.
Yeah.
And we know feelings change. And so your birth certificate really becomes a meaningless document, with the possible exception of it actually gives the date of your birth. And I just hopefully they won't be allowed to change the date of your birth because you feel younger or older.
Well, I can certainly identify with that. And if they're going to pass a bill like that in my state, I may just, I may support that one. If you can feel younger and be younger, I might rewrite my date of birth.
Yeah.
But this is obviously a very serious issue. So has there been much pushback towards your state government in WA?
Not really. The LGBT people obviously are very happy with it, although they're unhappy with the government because the government still hasn't brought in changes to the Equal Opportunity Act, which is our Anti-Discrimination Act over here, where they want some significant changes, and WA still hasn't brought in so-called gay conversion laws either. The LGBT activists are not so happy with the Labor government at the moment, but I think this is just one little catch-up thing that the Labor government has done or is doing now, which I guess in the lead up to the next election in March will, in the government size, perhaps appease the LGBT activists.
Yeah, it's a very interesting time. It makes me think about the book of Acts where it says when many, turn to the Lord, that the Christians and, Paul the Apostle in particular was accused of turning the world upside down. It seems like our world is just so confused now that it needs turning upside down again too, doesn't it, to go back to biblical truth? Yeah,
I mean, the things that were unquestionable, if I can put it that way, even 20 years ago, 20 years ago or 30 years ago, who would have thought that we could change our birth certificate and change the sex on our birth certificate just because we prefer to be identified as a woman or a man? In other words, that this document could be falsified simply to suit the whims of an individual.
Yeah, and it just feels like our society now is just going to spend the rest of its time chasing its tail. Because if this passes, once we go down this path, well then what's to stop someone from identifying as an animal and saying, I don't want to be a human anymore, I want to actually be a dog or a parrot or whatever else. And as you said, then let's just change our date of birth because, hey, I feel 25, so I might just slip that in there. So it just opens up a Pandora's box, doesn't it?
Yeah, look, and as silly as it sounds, there have been media reports of a child in a school that chose to identify as a cat, and they put a litter box for the child to do their business in, which you'd like to think that it couldn't possibly be true, but apparently it was. So, it just shows how once you go down this path of make-believe, where do you draw the line in the sand?
Oh, it's true. Yeah, my daughter went to a school, I won't say which one, and there was at least one. There might have been two girls that identified as cats there as well, all girls school, and they were living as cats in the school. So it's pretty messed up. But and the ACL, what sort of pressure are you trying to apply to pressure the government into perhaps using common sense on this?
Look, this one, we're letting that one go through to the keeper, so to speak, because it's simply bringing it in line with the other states. So we've decided not to invest resources in fighting this one, but we just thought this was an opportunity to highlight the folly of all of this, and particularly in the context of the CAS review that's been released a few weeks ago, which really indicates that so many people who want to identify as a different sex or gender actually regret doing that, and that that the treatment that's being offered at the moment in our gender clinics throughout our nation are actually based on very flawed procedures, and those procedures do not have a scientific evidence base to support them. And so that's why in the UK they've banned the use of puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones for people under 16 or 18, I can't recall now. Sweden's done the same, Finland's done the same, and there's quite a few other countries that are in the process of going down that path, and I think half of the states in the United States have done likewise, just to make sure that we don't let children make these decisions which they regret later. And there's much better ways of helping kids to come to a point where they accept their biological sex, rather than try and help them live in the make-believe world that they're a man or a woman when that doesn't align with their biological reality.
Yeah, and it's not going to bring long-term joy either, is it, living in a fantasy world? So it's, and I think there's been other studies done, hasn't there, that indicate that a lot of people wanting gender change actually have an underlying mental health issue or an exposure to extreme trauma or childhood abuse, and that's the underlying cause of this. So fixing the symptoms of their feelings is not going to fix the underlying cause. So they're going to be back to square one, whatever they're identifying as. But Peter Abetz from the Australian Christian Lobby, the State Director of the Australian Christian Lobby in Western Australia. Actually, I want to thank you so much for joining us on 2020 Today.
My pleasure.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.